thank you everyone for coming. I am Sarah Lisa Vogel, and I am very happy to welcome everyone here to this fifth edition of our Meetup series Connect. It's already the fifth time we're coming together in Altspace VR here. I initiated this Meetup series together with Tatiana from the Goethe-Institute Montreal in March 2020 to connect over borders and enable international exchange. And I am a co-founder of Women in Technologies Europe, which is a European community of VR creators, producers, makers, and enthusiasts. And together with the Goethe-Institute Montreal, we are now able to foster international exchange and collaboration between women working in this emerging industry. And we are doing that even without being physically together. So our meetups have a different theme for every edition, and today's meetup revolves around disembodiment. And I'm also more than happy to introduce Farina Hamann, who is, like me, a VR creator and media artist. And she is also the country ambassador for Germany at Women in Immersive Tech. And Farina is, since this edition, organizing and running this meetup series together with me. So thank you, Farina, for the great work here in this space and with the speakers. And I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So that's me in real life, and I think it's really important to empower women working with digital technologies and especially immersive technologies because, yeah, as we mentioned before in the teaser, there are a lot of male-dominated meetups around here. So it's great to be here, and yeah, I'm curious how we can develop this meetup edition.
Thank you, Farina.
Oh.
And I'm quickly just gonna introduce Joanna. Joanna is also in the space here. She's a Wonder Woman at Women in Immersive Tech. And right now she's in the Zoom because we are also live streaming and recording this on Zoom. So thank you, Joanna, for being with us, also virtually in another dimension. And I also want to briefly introduce Tatiana. She is the program curator at the Goethe-Institute Montreal. And as I said before, we started organizing these meetups together. Tatiana is doing an amazing job at running this with me and really also carrying this out into the North American region. Yeah, I'm, as always, super happy to collaborate with you, Tatiana, and the stage is yours.
So yeah, thank you so much, Sarah Lisa. As always, it's a pleasure. This is me in real life. Also, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm so happy. It's the fifth edition of our meetup series that we initiated last year, actually. And yes, so I'm the program curator at the Goethe-Institute in Montreal. We are the Cultural Institute of the Federal Republic of Germany. We foster cultural exchange between Canada and Germany, and yes, so these meetups are fit perfectly into this mission. And yes, I'd also would like to take a second to thank our partners. Farina, if you could switch to the partner slide. Felix and Paul are helping us out since the very beginning of these meetups, and of course, yeah, Women in Immersive Tech, who initiated this together with us and make this basically happen. So now I'm very happy to introduce Peggy Schoenegge, who is our first speaker and also the curator of this event. Peggy and I met in 2019. I think she's the first partner I met as a program curator at the Goethe-Institute at my first week at the Goethe-Institute in Montreal. So yeah, I'm really happy that you're here with us today. Peggy is an independent curator and writer. She focuses on art with new media, everything around AR, VR, XR, and in virtual and real spaces. She's also project manager at Peer2Space in Berlin and chairwoman at the Media Art Association Medienkunstverein Berlin. She's a lecturer and speaker. Currently, she teaches expanded reality at the University of Applied Sciences in Darmstadt, and her speeches can be heard, amongst others, at VRHAM or VICE conference. Her curatorial projects have been shown at the New School in New York City and NRW Forum, amongst many others. And her main interest as a curator are the conditions and challenges of digitalizations and the effects this has on everyday life, society, and culture. She focuses on topics such as gender, performance, and artificial intelligence. And yeah, I'm very happy to, yeah, the stage is yours, basically. Give a warm welcome to Peggy.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really happy about this invitation to curate this event here on disembodiment and virtual reality. And I'm also very happy to meet you all in this space, in Art Space VR, and also to speak about my work. As Tatjana mentioned, I am a curator for digital art, internet art, and art with new media such as VR and AR. And accordingly, I deal with the conditions and nature of the virtual space and also focus on the users. On the one hand, to enable an optimal work experience, and on the other hand, to understand the characteristic of the virtual work experience itself. And as we all know, virtual spaces work differently from physical spaces. Social VR enables us to meet our friend's avatar independently from our body's actual place. We are all experiencing this right here within this meetup. And although we are visually immersed in this environment, our body remains in the physical space of where we are, and yet the digital image has physical effects. Our body becomes the interface between the digital and analog world, where different processes take place and cause the body to seem to be dissolving. In 1991, Hans Moravec, a Canadian scientist with a focus on robotic technology, as a robot, that the human body is disused and won't be necessary in our future anymore because we will exist via technology. He said it would be possible to download one's consciousness to a computer. By transferring the mind to a technological device, the body would become insignificant. As a result, human beings would not be embodied and their existence would not depend on biomortality anymore. Consequently, human beings would become not just technologized, but also immortal. And with recent technology progress, Moravec's idea no longer seems to be completely absurd. Virtual reality, for example, as a technological and artistic medium, enables users to experience the dissolution of our biological status, which has often been described as disembodiment. However, I am not sure to what extent this description is accurate, as a certain physicality remains. The image of virtual space has an impact on us in a way what we feel physically. If we stand on the bar between two houses with a fear of heights, for instance, we freeze with fear. If a digital object comes directly to us, we tend to dodge. There are experiences in which we embody other figures and feel with these via perceptual psychological processes, so that one should perhaps speak of a virtual embodiment that brings a digital physicality. In 2018, Farina, maybe you could change the slide now. Thank you. In 2018, I curated a group show for the Overkill Festival in the Netherlands. The exhibition, This Could Be You, Disembodiment in Virtual Reality Art, is dedicated to the feeling of incorporeality and deals with what I just described. The title refers to Zeesy Power's eponymous VR artwork in which the user inhabits the body of an old woman. Over the course of time, the body of the old woman becomes the body of the user. And exactly this moment illustrates important characteristic of the virtual. Entering a virtual world allow users to immerse themselves in a completely different space with a completely different body. In these spheres, user can be everyone and everything. Feeling present in the virtual space makes them forget about their own bodies, but still affects us. And this matter was one of the main focuses in this exhibition. The VR experiences that were on view in this show implicate future living scenarios, but also reflect the current state of our society and its relation to technology. And these works, which were on view and within this exhibition, I will now briefly introduce to you so you get a better idea. The first work was Claire Henschke's March from 2017, which shows a deserted world without any humans. You can see an image of the installation and inside VR on the top of the slide. In the virtual world, we walk through abandoned places that were once places of gatherings and get-togethers, crowded places like shopping malls. And the experience itself, users have no body and become a shadow of themselves, which evokes a feeling of non-existence. While reflecting the presence of the space that are not used in the way they were supposed to be used, her work gives an impression of what a disembodied future of formerly inhabited areas could look like. Like ghostly sites, these places exist without use and seem almost desolate, over which essential traits of being human are brought before our eyes. Another work that was on view was Can Our Bodies Still Remember by Jessie Pex, in which she plays with the re-embodiment in the virtual room and questions whether our bodies have a memory and if such an experience has consequences. You get an idea of this work on the bottom images. In this experience, the user sits on a chair in the exhibition space. Putting on the VR headset, they find themselves in a similar position. Sitting in a desert-like environment, they look into a void with a quite meditative ambience. Looking down, you can see your virtual legs that slowly start growing beyond length of actual physical human legs, which creates an uncanny body experience. Putting off the headset afterwards and move in the physical world becomes a strange action then, because the physicality experienced in the virtual does not correspond to the physical and distorts the feeling of the own body. Consequently, our body remembers, which shows us that we experience both physical and digital space with our gathered experience, and that these experiences in turn influence our experience of both of the other world. Could you change the slide again, Farina? Another work that was on view was Martina Menegon's All Around Me Are Familiar Faces, which also confronts the user with a different body that are not theirs. Martina provides her 3D scanned face as a mask-like object within the virtual world. As some of them float in space and follow the user everywhere they are looking to, two masks are connected to the controller, becoming an actual virtual mask, which you can put in front of your face. Doing this, once again, evokes an uncanny feeling, as it seems like you put the artist's face onto your own. Additionally, you are able to multiply these masks by pushing the trigger button of the controller. You are actually able to draw a kind of line with the faces that, in their physicality, become sculptural entities that change the approach to the human body. The human body becomes an object that, via the reference to the artist, turns the status of being human into an object of contemplation and asks what meaning the body has in virtual spaces. And the last work, which as I said before, was the inspiration for the title of the exhibition. And I do not want to present it in detail, but I would like to use it to introduce our next speaker. Zeesy Power presented her work, This Could Be You, in which you as a user are mirrored as a 90-year-old woman to create a vision of what life with an immaterial body could be like and what it might or might not feel like. And because there is no one better to talk about this work than the artist herself, I, for now, thank you for your attention and now pass the stage to Zeesy. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I know we're tight on time, so I'll try and pack everything in super quickly. So my name is Zeesy Powers. I like to work with technology, particularly stuff that I think is just on the edge of becoming obsolete. So in 2017, through a residency at the Toronto Animated Image Society, I did this project, This Could Be You, and I've got a quote up here from the journalist Kevin Kelly. He's a writer for Wired. If a smartphone is a surveillance device we voluntarily carry in our pocket, then VR will be a total surveillance state we voluntarily enter. And I think this, like, surveillance is definitely something people are very concerned about. VR in particular is really something that's all about consumer surveillance, as is most of the surveillance we experience, especially in the West. But another thing that I think is really interesting about VR is just the unbelievable pace at which this hardware and technology becomes obsolete. For example, with this project, This Could Be You, the headset I was supposed to be using was about 18 months old, and I could no longer use it to make VR because the various programs, including just the Oculus program, were no longer compatible with it. And the same happened actually with this meetup today. The Goethe-Institute was kind enough to lend me a, again, like 18-month-old, maybe 2-year-old headset, and it just doesn't work with AltSpace VR. And this is sort of like a casualty of, I guess, improving the experience. And a lot of the reasons we want to improve the experience is because of issues like accessibility. And I'm a firm believer in accessibility. I think that that's really important. But there's often a lot of conflicting needs when it comes to accessibility. So for example, I suffer from something called cyber sickness. Something like 85% of women experience this and 30% of men. It's very gendered, but it's not exclusive. And obviously everybody's on a spectrum. However, what this means is I'm kind of limited to 10 to 15 minutes in a headset for a very high quality headset. And for a lot of people, this is sort of how their experiences are limited as well. I designed this program for, I guess it was the HTC Vive, which was the high-end one at the time. I don't know what's happening now. Something that was also really important to me was to sort of abandon controllers, because I wanted it to be a very seamless experience for people. So people who aren't interested in learning how to use hardware could just sort of like step into this headset and interact with it through a Kinect, which, as many of you know, I'm sure, is now itself no longer a supported technology. So it still works with this program, but it no longer is supported by Microsoft. Anyhow, I'm going to move on if we can have a next slide. Oh yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention about this is, like, with the body and the avatar I had in the VR piece, big question I wrestled with was, whose body are you going to inhabit? My programming skills were not at the level, and still aren't, to make it a dynamically changing body, which would have been really cool. So it kind of left me with, like, well, what sort of body am I going to use that's non-exploitative, but still has a lot of, like, emotional resonance? And I was like, well, what's the scariest thing for me? Oh, it'd be me as an old person, as an elderly woman. And by the way, like, I used Make Human for this. This is like supposedly what a 90-year-old woman looks like. I find that very funny. But I think this also really speaks to, what does autonomy mean in these spaces? If we're being monitored the whole time, and we're sort of, so what are the other social constraints? And as you'll notice from being in AltSpace VR, we're really encouraged to create an avatar that is a reflection of ourselves in real life, which is very the complete opposite of sort of the 90s ideal of, like, you can be anyone, anywhere, doing anything in virtual space, which is still the promise of VR, but it's sort of been pushed into this realm of like, no, 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 we want you to accurately represent yourself. Personally, I think that it's really great that people are able to do that, but I do think some of that is about identifying yourself as a potential market. Anyhow, so we're on this little slide of how do I fix this? This is from an app I made maybe 3 years ago, but I'm doing some modifications now. And essentially it's using a machine learning program to answer your burning personal questions based on diary entries that you write. And this project was pretty funny. Like, why am I bringing this up in the context of VR? It's because this machine learning model is based on a data set that was created by crowd workers through Amazon Mechanical Turk. And much like the way that VR, the world of VR, is shaped by market forces, this model that answers is supposedly like giving its answers based on your data, but the way it makes decisions is based on people, commercial actors, people acting under commercial motives, which is sort of what the virtual space really is about in the 2020s. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to wrap it up just talking a little bit. I'm currently doing some research into deepfakes. This is from a really exploitative Dr. Phil interview. What isn't an exploitative Dr. Phil interview? About a woman who she's digitally kidnapped another woman's children by stealing all. The woman is trying to make her small children into social media influencers, and then this other woman has stolen the images and posting them as though they're her own children. What a mess. But deepfakes are also interesting to me for all the same reasons. What does it mean to inhabit somebody else's body and to portray yourself as that person and to hijack them, to control their speech, to control their facial expressions, to put them on another body doing something else? And in many ways, it's using you know, an old technology, which is video, to recreate a lot of what is possible in VR, but also potentially harmful, and that is adopting or hijacking the body of another. And for me, I don't think any of these questions are resolved. I think that there's very strong positives and negatives to all of these technologies. Questions unresolved, but absolutely for me, I really feel like that all of these technologies should really be taken with a grain of salt, especially when the boosterism is coming from places with deep commercial interests. AltSpace VR itself was shut down in 2017 because it was non-commercially viable. And it's only when Microsoft bought it and invested some money in it that it really began taking off again, because it had this technological basis to support it. But much like the VR industry itself, the whole reason it took off in 2017 was because of Facebook's $3 billion investment in Oculus Rift. And without that, the sort of VR gold rush never would have happened. Anyhow, thank you for your time. I'm going to pass it on.
Thank you so much, Zeesy, for your input and interesting insights. We will talk about some details later. Yeah, but now we will get an input from a performative perspective on our topic of embodiment of today. So please give a warm welcome to the great choreographer and dancer Carly Lave, who will talk about the Golem project.
Hi, it's good to be here. I am going to discuss a little bit about my past work, Golem, and you can actually change the slide, and its relation to embodiment and specifically via motion capture technology and motion tracking technology at large. I have a sort of documentary film that I'm going to show at the end of my slides. So I just want to highlight a little bit about how I use motion capture technology with virtual reality and its sort of philosophical interest to me and my work as a dancer. You can go to the next slide. So Golem was a live dance piece that I created in Berlin, Germany, through a US Fulbright stipendium to research how dance can be captured with motion capture technology and rendered virtually. And so we tracked a dancer as she was moving during a live performance, and then we streamed that into sort of a virtual world that was hand designed to interrelate with the physical world. So there was a simultaneous live dance and a simultaneous virtual dance, and thus was quite cutting edge to maintain two simultaneous performances and thus multiple audiences, both in the physical theater in Berlin and also all around the world. You can go to the next slide. So here you can see a little bit about the theater, and I just kind of want to highlight really quickly for you a little bit about the motion capture system. So you'll see some lights in this image, and these are the cameras that are positioned, 18 of them, in a perimeter around this studio space. And they're using an optical positioning system in relation to the dancer with the black costume here. And on her costume, she has these small little balls that are bouncing light from the cameras. And that is how her position is tracked in real time. And she probably has 30 of these small metallic balls all over her body. And so that is how all of the specific absolute positioning from the elbow to the head to the hip bone is tracked and then rendered in a virtual space. You can go to the next slide. And maybe, actually, could you maybe go back? Sorry. The director and choreographer of Golem. I came to Berlin around September of 2018 through a Fulbright grant between the United States and Germany in order to work with a virtual reality lab out of Humboldt-University called Game Lab Berlin. And there I met with co-founder Tom Wiegel to use virtual reality as a medium to explore the representation of the body in the virtual world as well as the physical world. Together, we collaborated with Kaiserslautern Hochschule and their virtual design lab in the south of Germany to work in tandem and co-creating this pioneering dance project. The sound design for Golem was through Gungru Sounds of San Francisco, California, founder Arushi Jain. Arushi happens to have a background in virtual reality development, so it was a really perfect and sweet fit for the project. Arushi and I devised a composition that had moments of more ambient soundscape, of more percussive soundscape, and followed the virtual environments as well. We utilized the OptiTrack motion capture system to live record the dancer's movement into our virtual environment for Golem.
The motion capture is a professional motion capture which is used in the film industry. We use this technique for real-time capturing, so normally it's captured and then pre-processed, and in this case we use the real-time function, stream it to Unity, which is a real-time engine, and combine this with a virtual environment and stream this live into the audience here in the studio, and we stream it also live into the internet.
Using motion capture technology changes your relationship with your own body. You see a version of yourself in real time with the utmost minutia of latency that gives you an automatic feedback loop that as a choreographer you can turn into movement and reciprocity of self and bodily exchange. So I used a lot of that in our research workshops over the course of January and February and March and April to develop movement material that landed itself in the dance. When we think about new technologies such as virtual reality, we have this abstraction of the body, this abstraction of self, and we see this in a virtual form. I wanted to understand what is our relationship with our bodies in a different landscape, in a different environment. We tried a lot of different narrative approaches to developing this story. In many ways, we were really inventing the wheel for artistic storytelling between two mediums, virtual reality and dance. I really anchored on the story of Narcissus, the myth of Narcissus, because my interests as a choreographer are really settled in what is the self and how is the self embodied in this flesh, in this form. We anchored on that story and kind of developed this visual and virtual representation of body and landscape. We ended up with 7 different sort of virtual rooms and environments that this body, this avatar, explored over the course of the dance. All of the design that was done for Golem was created through a fantastic group of students from Kaiserslautern that hand designed and engineered everything that was seen in VR and as projected on stage. The experience of making Golem was truly one of a kind. I'm exceptionally grateful to the entire working team that put in so much energy to making this vision come to life. It was extremely radical to work with these technologies in an unprecedented way, and I think that we've really pushed the envelope in making a new work that hopefully we'll see more of in the future.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Carly. I think we could start with the Q&A. I prepared some questions, but maybe we can meet on stage, everyone. So yeah, I mean, if the others also have questions, just raise your hand. Feel free to ask and yeah, to get to know more about the projects. But first of all, I would like to start asking some question of mine. I would like to know, on the one hand, what were the reasons for you, Carly and Zeesy, to start working with VR, and what were the challenges? I mean, as most of us know, working with technologies always brings potentials and new approaches to your own practice, but it is also connected to problems and limitations. So yeah, what were the reasons on the one hand for working with VR, and on the other hand, what were challenges in dealing with it? Zeesy, maybe you can start.
Yeah, I think for me it was curiosity. I made this piece really at the beginning of the sort of like the recent VR boom. So the Facebook purchase had just happened pretty recently, maybe within the past 2 years. I think it was 2015 actually that they bought Oculus. And I had this opportunity to use this free equipment, and as I mentioned, I'm sort of interested in stuff that's just on the edge of obsolescence. And VR is kind of one of those funny things where it's like always almost obsolete. And the more I started using it, I was really interested in things like, you know, the Kinect that I was using as my motion capture controller. Its main limitation is this frontal facing. However, it's so affordable. It's like $50 for this thing that literally lets you go inside this body. So not only was the user able to see their own body in like look at hold their hands up in front of their face and see their hands and their legs, but also see their body mirrored in front of them. And very interesting to me that I knew that this technology, it was the Kinect 1, which is actually the Kinect 2, but anyhow, would itself soon become no longer supported. And I really just think that it's almost like an engineering problem for me that then becomes, now that I've reversed engineered it, how do I make something that's conceptually and visually able to explain in some way, even if it's just on like an emotional, visceral level, what's really happening underneath these technologies.
So would you say that there were also kind of like problems of translation of the movement as well as the body experience itself?
I mean, the glitch that happened inside it, you can see through some of the photos that are up or that were in my presentation. Like the body will often get hijacked by other people's bodies if they cross within the path of the motion sensor while you are experiencing the piece. It's very easy to get hijacked, and it's a very disorienting experience for people. But it's part of the experience for me. We're in these spaces that are in many ways beyond our control, and as I may have mentioned in my presentation, this idea of autonomy becomes very messy in VR spaces, also because they're far too complicated for us to control on our own. You know, Microsoft has built this space for us, and they have tens of thousands of highly skilled people working on everything they do. Whereas for most of us, we're getting stuff out of the garage sale.
Kali, you as a choreographer and dancer, I mean, you have a specific body feeling, of course, a consciousness about your body. So how was the experience for you to, on the one hand, to work with this technology, but also to translate this kind of movement, and also in regard to your body experience, which you have yourself?
Yeah, so I think one of the most interesting parts of my research was when I combined the technologies of motion capture with virtual reality, and I myself was being motion captured, but wearing a VR headset and could see my body through the sort of integration of these technologies together. I think that this is kind of the ultimatum for me as a choreographer and a dancer, to like really witness my virtual body, and have this constant feedback loop of how does my movement look, and like, can I mirror things? Can I jump in the same way I could jump in the physical world? And it just introduces a lot of new questions to what kind of choreography can I make as the sort of tool for my own movement expression. And so I, in many ways, feel like as a choreographer, I'm just kind of on the cusp of, now that I've done one or two projects and have worked with VR and motion capture, I have all of these new ideas and sort of new research questions to put forward, because it just takes, I think, enough user time and body time in this space. But I'm still mostly find myself to be fascinated at what goes wrong with the body, like what can't be rendered as well, if I'm integrating the two, like movement of the hands, or I mentioned jumping as an example, just interesting, like normal body things that we do, sitting down, interacting with another person's body, anything that's like, just can it be actually replicated in the virtual space? And I guess I want to push into this more. And some of my current research is going further into that in VR.
So would you say that this technology also changes the way you move? I mean, you already mentioned it, that it was hard to, especially like smaller gestures, it's hard to translate them.
Exactly.
So what's happening is that this technology kind of like decides the way you move, or the choreography in general, right?
Yeah, in so many ways. I mean, artists impose limitations on themselves in a creative process, and in dance we will impose limitations when we're making a dance too, right? Maybe even just something as simple as like the song I'm using is 5 minutes. Okay, that's a limit. On very, very easy limit. In the way we have something with VR, like if the limit is I cannot use small gestures to communicate a story with my body, okay, cool, I can actually think about larger gestures. What can be communicated through the body? What cannot be communicated? And so I find all of the limits exciting, I guess. It's a new way to look at how dance can be made, and what can be said and what cannot be said.
And I mean, I don't know, Zeesy, if you agree, but those limitations always inspire to kind of like cross or stretch these boundaries and find ways to, as I said, to cross these limitations. I don't know if you agree to that, but I know that you're...
From my experience, I really found that it's sort of like I said with the glitch, right? It becomes about embracing it. Like a lot of the problems you had with your very high-end motion capture are very similar to the problems I had with my very low-end consumer motion capture. So, people sitting, it's funny because they're not actually sitting on anything. They're just kind of floating in the air sitting. Sometimes if they're moving their hand in front of their face, depending on what their sweater is they're wearing, the hand will start to tremor instead of moving a bit more naturally. Yet at the same time, so much of it is so natural. They really are inhabiting this body. They really are in real time seeing this other person, that when that, you know, when they're body snatched, like when somebody else has hijacked their body and now they're stuck in a completely inhuman, twisted position, they're actually experiencing that, where their body is different. Or there were some people who tried it out. A number of people, I you know, watching people experience this, who will be very large people. For example, I'm a very small person, and this body, I very naturally was like, oh yeah, this is a body that I feel comfortable in. It's just the aesthetics of it that's strange. But for large people, it was a completely different experience for them, because this is a body that they've never experienced. And very often the way that the avatar would be moving in response to their movements was just slightly different. And I mean, I'm not in their body. I can't exactly speak for them, but it was remarkable to them, even though as a person just watching the live capture, it was just moving in time with their movements. But their visceral experience was so different, even without the body snatching.
Yeah, I know that there are questions from the audience, and before I would give the voice to you, I would actually like to ask one last question. As I mentioned in the beginning, I am actually not sure how to describe this body sensation in the virtual space precisely, as this embodiment doesn't exactly illustrate the VR experience, as we are still bound to our body. On the other hand, talking about embodiment can only partly be applied to the respective VR experience. So I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about this altered body experience? How would you describe it? Zeesy, maybe, Kali, maybe you want to start.
Altered body experience, the sensation. Yeah, well, I guess as a dancer, I think I tend to feel constantly very embodied, and thus very connected to like touch as a way of knowledge acquisition, even in like day-to-day interactions. So sometimes when I'm in virtual spaces, I think my other senses are heightened, and I find that to be interesting and cool, and a reminder of all of the ways that like our sort of neurocognitive processes are working to take in information, take in knowledge. And I also find that even as I'm sitting here talking to you now, I'm still using my hands to talk. You know, why do I do this? Right. So I think that there's this interesting level for me of even being self-reflective and aware of like my own tendency to be communicating physically while I cannot see you, and I don't have a video camera on, for example.
So you would actually say that, oh, sorry, Zeesy, go.
I think that's totally right on with the hand gestures and trying to, like, we're looking at a room full of people supposedly, but we're not, if we're not in a headset in front of either a motion capture device or holding a little device, you can't really see how we're gesticulating. At the same time, it's really funny watching people who are in a VR headset keep lifting their hands to their face in this gesture that is actually just holding the headset on. And I would say for me, it's funny, like, I really do just feel like I'm slipping into this body. What is a bigger sensation for me is space I'm in. So the first VR program I ever tried was Google Earth. And that was a really fascinating aesthetic because you're literally a colossus just striding across the planet, which, I mean, considering it's made by Google engineers, no surprises there. But at the same time, if you want to go into that granular level and see what it's like on street level, it looks like it was made by Gaudi or something. It's just lumps. Like there's no detail, there's no resolution, there are no people. And that's the kind of experience to me that really makes me feel unreal, and to really feel like, oh yeah, I'm not really here. And is a very interesting thing about VR to me. Not so much about the like, oh, this is or isn't my body, because I can see my hands in front of me as I'm moving them. It's about my body in this space. Why am I given this privilege of the space I'm in and the scale at which I witness it, and how is it being presented to me?
So similar to what Carly said, it is actually, and this is what also McLuhan described, that technology kind of like functions as an extension for the body, which crosses like this physical or biological boundaries. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I think that it's the politics behind it and the intentions behind it are that, like, the spaces we are in is what's most interesting to me, as well as, you know, the bodies we inhabit and how much control we have over them.
Maybe now it's a good time also to open up to the audience. So I know that there was one question. Maybe you can just speak up. I don't have any name, but...
Oh, you already did. Great. Yeah. Julia, you talk now.
So was there a question? Sorry if I didn't get it.
Yeah, I had a question from Julia. I don't know if you have a question, but you are unmuted now and you should.
Is Julia waving?
You might need to be unmuted.
Yes. Try again. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Ah, now it's working.
That works.
Hi everyone, and hello Carly. I'm Julia. I actually came by. Thanks for
Hi.
having me, and thanks for the invitation. It was really a pleasure to hear your talks. Also, I came in late, and also I was very distracted by, in a positive way, distracted by this like all VR space here, which I really love. It's my first time here, and my question is more on like, thank you all for your talks. And I think my question is more on a level to maybe the organizers, and it was mentioned before that the space is like designed by Microsoft, but why did you specifically like, could you decide for this space for these talks, and why did you maybe decide for this hall here with the view onto the city and so on?
Maybe I can answer this question.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I choose this room. So this space is actually a template from Allspace VR. So didn't design the lamps here or whatever, but we choose it from, or I choose it from some different templates because there's a lot of templates that are more business-like and so on. And then the like the CDs and the toilet paper are actually models made by Zeesy, so there's some customization.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see the
answer
toilet
the
paper yet.
question.
Yeah, thank you. Didn't see the toilet paper yet, but now I'm actually, like, now that you mention it, I can see you're over there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions.
I can also maybe add to that we that there are like many VR spaces that we could use actually, but we decided to use Allspace VR because it is actually, or it seems for us for these meetups to be like the most accessible space, because you can join via a VR headset. Apparently Allspace is not supporting older versions of Oculus, but yeah, at least you can join with a headset, and you can also join with a PC into the mode and then on Mac. And yeah, so this is the reason why we actually choose to host those meetups here.
Yeah, really great. Thank you so much.
And I mean, that's actually, again, this topic of accessibility, right? Which Zeesy also already mentioned, which is still very challenging working with this technology, even though especially WebVR is growing and developing further. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, you have now the little hand icon on the right side of your screen, or your VR
I have a quick question for Carly.
Yeah.
I'm curious, why the Golem project?
What do you mean, why?
Yeah, why the Golem project instead of the Narcissus project?
Well, I think that unfortunately, like I didn't quite have enough time in the documentary to explain, but when we were working with the dancers in particular and kind of training them on working with motion capture technology, we worked with a lot of there's movement prompts in the field of dance to generate choreography and movement. So we worked a lot more with like I said, this concept of the self to get them in a place where they were, at least in the narrative, becoming obsessed with this kind of virtual avatar. However, the overall like virtual story and virtual scenes and progress was much more related to the myth of the golem. So it's a little bit of a misnomer because it was more of a working process that our team used internally, but the actual narrative and the story in the performance is much more related to the myth of the golem.
Nice, thank you. Kali, I know that you have to leave, so maybe it's now a good time to just open this evening and just talking with everyone. If you have questions,
thank you so
please
much.
feel
Could you maybe
free.
take one picture before Kali leaves?
Yeah,
just
sure.
like everyone come to
cool.
the stage, come together, and let's take a picture in front of the Connect.
I'm also
visual.
unmuting everyone now, so you are able to unmute yourself now and speak.
And feel free to make some emojis or yeah, exactly.
There's so many cowboys here.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, true.
The Texas takeover.